Welcome to What? That Old Queen, a candid and adult take on queer life quandaries at a certain age. So please listen at your own discretion. Presented by Bernie and Tommy, their views are their own and in no way reflect those of any service you may hear this program on. Now, let your ears be upstanding for the Old Queen. Hello and happy Christmas, and we hope you're not too full or too hungover from your Christmas shenanigans on this Boxing Day release. So this episode isn't quite what we had planned. We were going to do a Queermas Quandary episode and have a little posse, but unfortunately COVID and the pandemic and general cold and flu got in the way. Unfortunately, Tommy's still recovering from a flu-like virus, which isn't COVID, but he's not well enough to record this week. And we also thought it prudent not to be socialising indoors at the current time when Omicron is raging around the UK right now. So we'll save our Christmas episode for Christmas yet to come. But with kind permission from the lovely John Thomas, who recorded an episode for us last February, we have a little extra special treat for you. Only released on Patreon so far, which means 2.5 people have listened to it. This is the general release of the only ever episode of What That Old Queen Dethroned. It's part of the Zoom call that we had after we finished recording. We talk a lot about It's a Sin, the HIV pandemic, because that was all very prevalent at the time. Drag Race, Season 13, Season 2 of UK Drag Race, because that was also current back then. And we talk a little bit about the pandemic, because we were in lockdown in February 2021, and it looks like we're heading there again 11 months later. So if you've ever wondered what happens when we stop recording, let's go back to February 2021 and listen to the only episode of What That Old Queen Dethroned.
Thank you everyone for listening. John, thank you for being our guest. We will catch you next time on What That Old Queen.
Hello.
Well, we'll wait for the credits to roll and then we'll carry on talking, which I think is just about now. Thanks, John. That was great.
It was a pleasure. It's so nice to see you both and have a chat as well.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
I did, it's back in the summer now, I did a bit of extra work for my friend Sadiq's film, The Chosen Haram, he's like he's like an aerial pole dancing artist, and it was a stage show that he was making before this time last year and then turned it into a film. But I was an extra in a club and I had to be in leathers cruising in the toilet, basically, with my cameo moment. And then he sent me some of the images and I was really confused briefly because they looked exactly like the photos from the horseplay cruising leather party.
Amazing.
Really took me back.
I think that has to be my favourite party.
Yeah,
Apart from Eve Klein Blue, obviously.
I mean, that was a seminal creative moment, I feel, in my career.
Well, in all of our careers.
I don't think I was at the blue one. I can't remember that.
Well, me, Neil Studley and John on stage naked?
Don't remember, which makes me think. I mean, I saw the pictures, but I don't think I was there.
Maybe you blanked it out.
It's not like, unless you were in like the front 2 rows of people watching it happen, it wasn't really visible, or so you might have just been there but socialising.
Yeah,
I was probably smoking in the yard.
Yeah.
Blink and you'll miss it.
What I loved about the cruising one was, I think, because it was in the cinema and it just felt more anarchic somehow. Like, even though like the old police station wasn't a club, it somehow felt more like a club space, whereas the cinema just felt like you were having a party not a house party, but like definitely having a party where you shouldn't be, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I
remember from that night feeling like I'd completely dressed up in a way that was a bit alien to me, and then I was told that I needed to dance on this podium, and I was like, I don't really know how I'm supposed to do this. I've never done this before. And then something came over me that I just felt like a different person, and I just performed that role, and I felt like great that I did that.
I felt like I was completely in a role because I was dressed up in that leather gear, which I felt really empowering. And also people didn't recognise me because I was wearing a hat and dark glasses, and people were having like conversations right in front of me, and I was like, hello. And they were like, oh my God, it's you, Bernie. And that's what I kind of loved about it. And the fact that everybody, apart from like 1 or 2 people, made the effort to dress up. It was just, I think it was a real moment in the Bristol gay scene, because I don't know that there's many nights that would be like that one. And I remember walking into that bar and they were just playing 70s disco, and everyone's dressed up in leather and dancing to disco, and it just felt like being in New York in the 70s.
Yes.
I've been reading Dancer from the Dance, which is all set in like late 60s, early 70s New York, in all of those bars, and it's got such a wonderful feeling about the whole book. And it feels almost like a halcyon time of being gay at that moment, before HIV, before all of that, and just everyone just being quite free with their sexuality and having fun. And I almost feel like HIV kind of made that step back a bit in the 80s.
Yeah, who was I having this chat with someone, and they were like, did HIV advance gay rights, or did it hold it up? And one person's view was like, I think it made people be more angry and protest more. But I feel more like actually it gave more ammunition to kind of evangelicals to really say like, well, look, these are not good people.
Yeah, I think so. And that's the difference between that pandemic and this pandemic, isn't it? Because this pandemic is literally affecting everyone. You can't blame it on a fringe element of society and pretend it's not really happening to the rest of them.
Yeah.
So it's not, I mean, I'm sure there's still evangelicals who are saying that this is our retribution for whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I think the positives of the HIV pandemic was that it did make people a bit more aware, and it did bring kind of the gay community to the forefront in a way, perhaps in a bad way to start off with, but also I think ultimately it was positive.
What's great, what was for me an unexpected turn about It's a Sin was like the sort of the straight son of the woman that looked after the house that the Welsh guy lives in, first of all.
Yeah,
you just get an insight into that life just by the mother walking through the hospital.
Yes. Yeah. You have what? I think you're further than episode
that's 3.
Is that 3, is it? Because I was going to say, I didn't know if you... Because there is that thing where it reveals that it was her son that actually gave him HIV.
Yeah. So no, that is in the 3rd one. That's why I found it so hard, because I just immediately I fell in love with that Welsh guy, and I was like, well, well, he will be fine because he's just been completely sensible, which is a really stupid thing to think.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It only takes like one. It was like playing Russian roulette if you were having unprotected sex back then, you know. But the death wasn't instant. It was like elongated suffering. And I think you do get that impression, and I think that's why it was quite good that he did get HIV, because it just shows that it's not just people who are having loads of sex. And I like the fact that a lot of those guys that were having loads of sex didn't get HIV as well. It's like, this isn't a thing. This isn't slut shaming. This just is a thing that happened.
The Welsh mother was gorgeous as well.
She was really good, really well represented as a good parent. And I think that a lot of us have had pretty bad parents in terms of our sexuality. And you were saying that your mum giving you sex education. I mean, I literally had nothing.
Yeah.
And I was told, I think my mum told me once that she said, well, there's straight people who are fine, and then there's gay people, and that's not very good. And then there's bi people, and they're the worst. And that was the most sex education I got from my mum. And I was just like, I don't want to talk about this, Mum. So, and I've having seen the whole thing, and I don't want to give the game away, but I think there's a certain character that doesn't get retribution, and I think she is like the personification of that society at that time, of an older generation. And I think she was dealt with really well, and she shouldn't get a retribution.
I think in the show it's like it does do that thing of like, it sets up in episode 1, I guess, this like wonderful queer kind of like well, call it queer, I guess it's gay, really. Kind of paradise. They're all young, they've gone to uni, they've escaped small town homes and gone to London, and they can dance and party and just walk into a job in a bar. But then so much of the story does feel like it's about their relationships with their parents and with Jill, the straight friend. So from that point of view, it doesn't really there's definitely like a separate queer story that doesn't involve all those parents.
Yes.
It would have been the case for a lot of people, I think.
And that's the shame, that they had to kind of go from their new family back to their old family that didn't really understand them.
Yeah.
And that's such a shame now. I think people with HIV get a lot more support now from friends, and it's not this shut off. You're absconded back to your, what was it? His agent says there's a lot of young men who are going home. I don't want you to go home. And I mean, I moved like 200 miles to come out. So
I can't help but think about my show King's Cross Remix when I think of that programme. Yeah, because it's the same stories, really.
Yes, but King's Cross is really told from the perspective of being in that scene at that time, and from people who had friends and lovers and advocates as well of that time. And I think that's what's really beautiful about that show, and really touching as well. I mean, I cried at that.
Well, so did I, and I was on stage.
There is, I think, like something of the 80s really not being that long ago, but now feeling historic.
Yeah.
And there's and I think because I guess like a lot of gay culture has an obsession with youth, so it's very much forward looking all the time, and is a bit like reticent to look back unless it's to do with like campness and like comedy or the aesthetic of the past. Yeah, so in a way, this does feel It's a Sin does feel a bit like a sort of like, okay, well, we're just going to do this now. We're going to look back, and it's maybe something that we need to consider a bit more.
Yeah, and I think it's timely because, it's telling a story of the AIDS pandemic amidst a global pandemic. It's really interesting because I've had like cousins who I haven't spoken to for years kind of message me out of the blue because they've watched It's a Sin.
Well, that's what I mean by saying it's sort of this program for heterosexual people, really. And education for them.
And them kind of messaging me and going, oh my God, I had no idea what this was like for you back then.
Wow.
I wish we were closer. I wish I could have been there for you.
Yeah.
And
what I want to know is, like, when I was young, there was this opportunity to, you know, because I was sort of from a working class background, you could be propelled into, you know, going to that sort of flat that's that beautiful, like, flat on the South Bank or wherever it is. And you know, I was often in sort of situations like that. I don't know whether that still happens now.
Well, do you mean the one that was overlooking the river, the really posh flat?
Yeah.
I think you're right. That was the other thing that I was remembering from that. I think because Matthew Austin did a tweet about it saying that he loved the first episode. And I think Dame Anna Rutherford responded saying that she thought that the parties looked boring. And I was just like, actually, the parties were not boring back then. And there was very much a culture of house parties, and all sorts of people would go, you know, be straight and gay people there, especially in Bristol. And I feel like the house party kind of scene has really disappeared in kind of recent years. But it was very prevalent back in, you know, the 80s. But maybe it's an age thing. Maybe we're just not getting invited to those parties.
I mean, I feel like, well, this is making a generalisation. For me, when I was a teenager and maybe early 20s, a student in London, there was a bit more of a, like, I have no money, so I'm just gonna like see whether I've got a fiver, let's see where the night takes me kind of thing. So you might end up somewhere terrible or somewhere amazing. Whereas I guess as you establish your friendship group, you're a bit like, okay, this is the circle that I move in now, which you know,
you don't get taken out of.
It's like, we'll go to the Phoenix, that's where we'll see everyone kind of thing. Or like, these are the places we go.
But there were a lot more gay bars, and I mean, everybody used to go out. There weren't any apps back then. The internet wasn't a thing. So if you wanted to meet people, you had to go to a gay bar or a club or cruising or to a party.
Yeah. I also think house parties have kind of been replaced by, like, for gay men, by chill out culture now, which is not even the after party, just like, I think for some people the chill out starts 8 p.m. on a Thursday or a Friday. Well, during the pandemic and just happen whenever. But obviously then you're not going to have women, or it's going to be a much narrower, like, guest list.
Yeah.
Because it's more based on, like, I guess, like, sexual preferences. But certainly, even if you're just chatting with people and rather than having sex, it's not going to be that fun thing where you meet, like, a fabulous lesbian, or like this, like, 60-year-old matriarch who lives in this amazing kind of, like, gothic mansion, is just hosting all these queer kids because she loves how fabulous they are. Like, which I kind of feel that's the kind of party that I sort of remember, where you're like, you kind of just meet these incredible characters.
Yeah.
And it's a
totally
experience rather than a everyone sat in their pants experience.
I mean, it's all very much of that studenty kind of age, isn't it? I guess loads of students are still having parties and stuff. We're just on the the other side of that.
We're invited to different parties.
yeah, totally.
Or we wish we were.
I'd go to any party right now, you know. If I could, if we're allowed to, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think ultimately that show is, I think it's been good, to be honest. Yeah, I can understand people kind of criticising it, but as you say, it's not going to be all things to all people, because nothing ever can be.
Like, I think for me, like, it was very emotional watching it. It's not like, I'm not someone who's like, wow, I've been seen, or like, I also feel like the production values were a bit low. It definitely looks like it was made in Manchester, not in London. I
thought it was weird that the guy is from Years and Years, and also Russell T Davies' show was called Years and Years. Like, that's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. It was a weird dovetail that I don't think it means anything, but it's like, it's quite specific at the same time.
Yeah. Because we watch, there's a sort of group of queers that we all watch Drag Race together, and then we get on Zoom and chat about it.
Nice.
And then we're like, oh, he's from Years and Years. I was like, what, the TV show? And I was like, no, he's in a band. I don't know who any of the bands are these days.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so years and years a bit. They're a queer pop band, aren't they?
I didn't know that. You say?
He is gay.
Yeah.
Aren't.
But I think the songs are quite queer, aren't they? The lyrics and stuff.
He likes the lyrics, so they're very gay, so they're very queer. And I think he's a good spokesperson for, or advocate in the community. I think what's good about the TV show is I think it sparked loads of conversation. So actually, it could have been, and actually, it's good it sparked conversations about what's left out. So even if a straight person who doesn't really know about AIDS in the 80s watches it and gets a bit of an education, and then texts their cousin to be like, "Oh, I had no idea."
And apologizes. I didn't really know what to do with it. It was just like, well, that's how it was back then. But there was a lot of me not sharing my sexuality until I was 30 with my family. So, it's not really their fault. But in a way, it kind of is, because I wasn't in an environment where I felt I could be open
completely. Whereas if one
accepted,
and I don't know whether, I'm sure it wasn't, well, it's hard to imagine it being intentional, but the fact that its release is so close to National HIV Testing Week has been great in terms of publicity for that, because the two dovetail quite nicely. Even if the show isn't educational in terms of thank goodness HIV has changed in the last 40 years or whatever. Yeah, I think Tom is right. It does definitely feel like it's been made for the straight female eye, as it were.
A straight palate.
Yeah.
But, whatever works, I think. If it's making people more aware of what we went through back then, and, increasing HIV awareness now, that I think is a win-win, really.
Yeah. Yes. It's a win-win.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Drag Race. We should have talked about, because we've got double Drag Race.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
It does feel like one of the things that's keeping me alive until you.
Yeah. I used to hate the whole thing, but now I'm just into all of it.
Yeah,
I sort of almost know their names. Right? It's
it's quite early on.
Yeah.
And also Rosé, who is in the American one, when I went to New York for my 50th, she came into Blazing Saddles when I was there. And I didn't speak to her, but she was there, and she was announced as being drag royalty.
What do you think of Rosé?
I think that she's really polished, and she's there, and she thinks she should win, but it's all very controlled, and I think she needs to kind of let loose a little bit. It's all a bit safe, and I think she needs to be a little bit unsafe.
That's what I think too.
Yeah,
it's too vulnerable, haven't you, to win?
I think so. You need to break out a bit, and it's all a bit controlled and a bit. Yeah, there's a veneer there where actually we need to break through and find the rawness of that person. So
Rosé. So the last 2 seasons of US Drag Race, I've known Queens, which has completely changed my way of watching it, because 3 years plus ago it was like watching cartoons or something very, very far, because it's just kind of so larger than life. And then Rosé is one that I met in New York. We've kind of made online friends since. And then Candy Muse I worked with while I was there too, and she was incredible, but such a diva. But then it's suddenly you're like, oh yeah, there are some real people, and
it does change it when you know them a bit.
So do you know anyone from the British one?
The only one I know is Ginny Lemon.
Oh, okay. And I think Ginny's got quite an interesting story. Joe Black, did you know Joe Black?
I mean, I think I've seen them probably, but yeah.
I think it's a shame that they went home first episode. Quite shocking, and there's been lots of talk about that online and stuff. But I don't really know them myself. I thought it was a bit harsh that they went home.
But they are sort of on that point of very old school drag and new wave, aren't they?
Yeah.
I could see why.
But it's interesting watching American and UK in parallel and how different it is. Because the thing is about UK is quite campy. It is a bit panto. It is about
personality.
It's about personality and humour, and not about being pretty. and fashionable, whereas America is all about being pretty and fashionable with the kind of humour tagged on. And if you've got all of it, it works over there. Whereas over here, it's not quite the same. You can't be, because there's no pageants over here. So we don't have those pageant queens. So it's a very different
pageant in Folkestone, though.
Did you?
Yeah, it was bizarre. Yeah, It was so bizarre because it was all straight people.
Right.
And then there was a just table of queers that were there. And it was in this massive hotel in Folkestone. And it was basically just, we were watching a beauty pageant. You know, that was all it was.
Yeah. With drag queens.
Yeah.
Wow. So there is a pageant kind of scene over here. Okay, I didn't think that was a thing.
Yeah,
whereas it's massive probably, in America.
Yeah. It's not very big, but it's in Folkestone.
Yeah, it's probably pertaining to those very specific.
How dare you? I'm a man of Kent. Folkestone's the place to be in Kent.
I think a problem with, I was thinking this actually, I thought UK Drag Race feels a bit more like fly on the wall as well in terms of the filming.
Yeah.
The acting by the contestants, whereas US feels very like controlled. It's very much like self-aware and like tits and teeth and on for the camera. Drag Race feels like it's a modelling competition, and drag certainly here isn't a modelling gig. It's a live performance gig.
Yeah, it's based on America's Next Top Model, isn't it? So, but it does have that performance element, and that's what I love about it, because you have to be good at so many different things in order to succeed in drag. You know, you do have to be a good seamstress. You do need to know about fashion. You do need to know about makeup, but you also need to be able to act, and you need to be funny. You need to sing, and you need to dance, and you know, and not everyone's going to be good at all of those things. And I think the fashion side of it in the UK is it's all so campy and in stark contrast.
That awful outfit that Tia Maria wore. It's just like
tea or coffee.
Tea or coffee. Yeah.
I mean, it just looked like it was from Chaplin's or something, didn't it? And so many of those outfits on that runway, that episode, just that were disastrous compared to the American ones.
Some of the good ones were bad.
Yeah.
And the ones that were the best would have been like the like mid-range ones in the American version.
Yeah, or the worst. It's but I quite like the fact that it's quite different. I'm wondering that we don't have as many like last season in the UK one. There were quite a few queens which just kind of flourished on their humour really and their quirkiness. Whereas there doesn't seem to be that many personalities like that in the UK Drag Race this time round. I don't know. Am I wrong?
Yeah, Ginny Lemon would.
I'm in love with
Ginny Lemon's been brilliant.
Amazing.
She was brilliant in that Rats musical thing. I think she should have won that because I think she performed the best, to be honest, because it was really campy and, you know, I just loved it. But, yeah, I don't know.
From a non-TV show perspective, the fact that she is like intelligent, self-deprecating, funny, I don't know, like can sing and perform, and she was a rat with an ear on her back. It's like, you know, as a performer or a host or an entertainer, I'm like, you're amazing. Or even as a spokesperson for my community. But unless you can make nice clothes and look hot on the runway, you can't win. And it's a bit like reality as a drag performer, that's not the main criteria, actually.
Well, I don't even think it's about looking hot. I think it just needs to have a storyline, be interesting and well executed. It's not. I don't think it's all about looking sexy. But yeah, I don't know. It's a different style of drag here.
It's like, you know, the has to either needs to be like female impersonation or needs to be conceptual. Either way needs to be like high end.
It needs to be polished. Yeah.
I also think, having watched, like, I was late to Drag Race, but I've watched all the old ones. Is I feel like before it kind of went mainstream, it definitely felt a bit more like queer representation for queer people. Whereas I feel like now, especially the US one, feels very much like queers served up for heterosexual entertainment.
Yeah.
I can definitely feel that, and in a way it feels a bit like it's like the circus, and you've got all these drag queens running around performing to be goaded, applauded, or laughed at by like heterosexual gays, which I'm not. I've noticed that more now, I think. And I'm just a bit like, I'm not totally sure that that's what I want this show to be. Or for people in my community to feel they have to jump through that hoop in order to reach a certain level of profitability in their career and stuff like that. Whereas I think like 6 years ago, it felt more like, this is cool. Like RuPaul made something quite radical, like this really gay TV reality show, but now it's kind of like transitioned into being like, well, to be profitable, we need to really think about the, particularly straight female audience and not being too risque or too obscure.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I still think it's brilliant. I mean, if you, again, in stark contrast to the 80s, the very fact that we have a really popular reality TV show with queer, gay, trans drag queens on it is amazing. And I think it's still subversive in many ways.
Yeah.
But if it is made for a straight audience, again, I think that's only a good thing because I think it kind of makes us more accepting in many ways. But I still think we need that underbelly of our own culture to be a little bit ours and not straight.
Yes. Yeah. And the UK version feels more like that to me as well.
Yeah.
The fact that they gave Ginny like quite an extended amount of screen time to explore and share like the non-binary, like their non-binary experience.
Yeah.
Really good, because in a way you could gloss over that much quicker in the editing process. You felt like, we just need to address the fact that they're non-binary, this is what it means, and now move on to the next like funny joke kind of thing. But actually, they gave it quite a lot of time and a lot of heart, really. So that was, I think, an element of like proper representation in terms of being non-binary.
Definitely. I think it's good. I like it. As you say, it's helping us get through lockdown. Tommy's going to take a photo.
Yay!
He's sending you a dick pic.
Great. I mean, it's a very invitational scarf around Tommy's waist, I see.
I think John needs a wave or something so that we can... Yeah.
Are you taking a photo of John?
Just no, John. For you.
Oh, okay.
That's all right. No.
Well, why don't you sit down there? I've got a wide angle on mine.
Yeah, that's better.
Smile, John.
Hi.
I am recording this for my OnlyFans site.
Yeah.
So no, it's automatically recorded, so I don't use them, but maybe I'll use it for a screen grab. I'm going to use some of your saucy pictures for publicising the episode. Is that okay?
Yes.
Because I don't think we did that last time.
What about my saucy picture?
Well, obviously.
Like you should do like there's books where you like flip the head and the body and to make different characters. Like a cross section, which is like a mixture of like Tom, Bernie, and John. So it's like Tom's hair, Bernie's glasses, John's beard. Although maybe Bernie's beard would be better. I don't know. And so on all the way down the body. So I'll provide genitalia where necessary.
Yeah. Okay. Well. We'll do something like that.
And also, like Tom, your hair is looking so gorgeous.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just like I don't think long hair is going to be on the cards for me anytime soon. But I can feel it's also like going coarse now, whereas yours is looking proper like lustrous and.
Well, I've not had anyone cut it really, apart from friends, and only trimmed for a whole year. I'm just taking loads of vitamins for it.
Yeah, it's just looking beautiful. Yeah. So well done.
It really suits you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Because it's just like I think it kind of makes you in many ways. I think me having long hair would not make me. Although I do look good in a wig,
Yeah.
My tummy obviously makes me. So, and the dad body. Anyway, thank you, John. It's lovely to see you.
You both as well. I miss you.
Hopefully I'll have we'll have an excursion to London again, and we can have lunch outside al fresco like we did last summer.
Wearing latex gloves and whatever else it takes.
Well, we weren't doing that in August, were we?
No, but we were allowed to do that, and I feel like I'm a bit concerned about what we're going to be allowed to do anytime soon. But yeah, I'm definitely coming back to Bristol as soon as it is considered acceptable to travel. I
think once this vaccine comes out, I know we're all banking on it, but I think it will be so much better. I think we will be there's going to be a level of protection there. So I feel like well, as soon as and because I'm over 50 and have chronic kidney disease, I think I might get it quite soon. So so it should be.
Well, aren't all the vulnerable people meant to be done by mid-February or something?
Yeah, I'm not that vulnerable, so I won't be mid-February, but I might be before other people that are 51.
I'm in group 6.
Oh, yeah, I have no idea what group I'm in.
How many groups are there?
I think 9, and then 9 who count as vulnerable, and then it's everyone else after that. And I'm in group 6. So.
I'm probably in 8 or 9. So
if you've got a condition, I think that probably bumps you up a bit. Maybe you're in 7. Who knows?
Maybe, but my condition's got better, so it's because I take loads of Chinese herbs and stuff, and it's actually got better than it was. So I know I get a flu jab, and I've had that. I think
you're in group 6, actually, because group 6 is the conditions.
Oh, okay.
Whereas all the groups are based on
what group I'm in.
What condition have you got?
Well, I've only got sort of mental condition.
I would just when we hit group 6, we'll let you know, and you can just go and tap on that pharmacy door and be like, "No, I'm not on the list, but like mentally, I need to be." And I won't go away.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, roll on the summer when hopefully it will be better than it is now.
Yeah.
I think. But thank you, John. It's amazing to have you back. Yeah, your episode was like the most listened to in the shortest amount of time that we've ever had.
That's good. That's nice.
Your sound is completely different now.
Is it different?
Yeah. Well, a little bit. Yes.
You're like right in my ear now, like you weren't before.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I guess I'm now like lying on my bed, so I guess my face is closer to my laptop.
Like it feels like you're whispering in my ear. And now you're giggling in my ear.
Some are. I think something I've thought about with like shifting from theatre to porn and which has been a big shift in income as well, is like it feels really like I feel like being an artist obviously doesn't really work with like capitalism, and that's kind of a really big problem, especially in terms of I think live performance making.
Yeah.
And if you make a painting or a pot, it's a bit more easy to be like, I've made this thing and I can objectively say the materials are worth this much money and it will live forever. And now I can add on extra price because I'm famous or I'm dead. Whereas if you make a play or a live performance that can only exist while it's happening, it's like, well, in reality, like watching a show for an hour or 2 hours is never going to be worth the amount of man hours that was spent making it happen. But at the same time, like, art is so important and like serves, is profoundly worth way more money. Like, a good work, a good performance, a good artist is worth so much to like the soul of someone than a t-shirt or a suit. And then I find myself now in this like fortunate position where, because like porn or my OnlyFans is giving me like enough money to live off, which doesn't take up that many hours to generate that income, I can then do other things for free, which I guess is kind of like, I guess when I was a student, that was kind of how I approached making theatre. Like I'd work in a pub or whatever, and then make plays with my friends in my spare time for the love of it. Obviously, you reach a point in your life where you don't want to just be doing things for the love of it. You want to be able to like pay your bills and have nice food and
yeah, totally.
Yeah, and not have to do something else to juggle that.
Yeah, it's a difficult. I mean, I went fully self-employed last January.
Oh, yeah,
and it was like the worst time to do it. But you know, I think things will only get better. Totally.
Yeah, it's a bit terrifying to imagine they'll get worse. I mean, I think they will get worse for some people, but then I think like when things get really bad, it also like forces invention as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's going to be very sad. I think lots of queer venues are going to close down, and just venues generally, but particularly queer venues that I care about. But I think there's going to be this like incredible renaissance when nightlife resumes, of all these new venues and nights and artists like creating new things out of this like vacuum.
But I think that's just going to take a while, isn't it? It's because we've lost so many queer venues anyway. And that was the other thing with It's a Sin, because it was just remembering there were so many bars and places to go in Bristol, and there aren't that many. You know, they're cut in half now.
Yeah.
I've got this grant from the council to make a show about the disappearance of the gay venues.
Oh, good. And it's also like the disappearance of like for gay venues now to survive, they've got to be like based around like dancing. So, and definitely around alcohol. Whereas my friend shared on Facebook a few months ago, it was this really weird like TV advert, I guess maybe for like CFAX, not CFAX, but it was like a little kind of like video infomercial of gay venues in London in the 90s, I think.
Yeah.
And it looked very like home footage, but like it showed like a gay restaurant, for instance, and it was much more like, oh, you can pop into this place in the daytime and like have a pint or have a coffee. And actually, there was one venue that opened.
Do you remember Spartacus? Oh,
was that a magazine?
It was a book. It was a book.
Yes, yeah, but it's still around.
Is it?
Yeah, and it's a guide of all the gay venues around the world, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like I saw that like in Clone Zone or something, like the first time I went in, and it was obviously there's probably a lot less venues in there now.
Yeah, it's now a pamphlet.
But it was interesting. I was talking to Danny. It was 2 years ago now, and I was talking to him about the old venues in Bristol and the different venues that you could go to, and he was like, where are those safe queer spaces now? Because we need them. And I think trans queer people, quans, I think that's a new word, and non-binary people kind of need that. They need a safe place to go. And it's kind of what Joe was doing with Thorny.
Yeah.
But there's no specific places where you can go and be safe and express yourself. And it's a shame really that like we've progressed in so many ways, but technology has kind of taken away the need for venues.
Yeah, there's been a few places start or pop up this year in London, which has been good. There was one called We Exist, which is like a trans cafe. It was a pop-up in October. It was like a queer but trans-focused cafe and kind of like workshop activist space. And there's also a new venue which sounds amazing called the Zodiac Bar, which is run by a trans woman from Thailand who basically felt so excluded in any kind of mainstream gay venue she went to that she's like, I'm opening my own bar, and it's called Zodiac because we all have a place within the Zodiac astrologically, and I think it's very much like a performance space, but it's very like, I believe, very inclusive in terms of being like, they want everyone to feel welcome, and like amazingly they opened, I think, in the summer, and they've already like moved into bigger before the lockdown most recently into bigger premises because of demand, which is great. But yeah, it would be nice to have like gay cafes again. I remember going to First Out, the one that was at Tottenham Court Road. It was like a gay cafe.
There used to be like a gay queer cafe bar in Bournemouth, bizarrely, when I was going down in the late 90s. I think it was called the Hollywood Bar. But you could go and hang out during the day, and it was all kind of open. They had chairs on the kind of on the street, al fresco as well. But yeah, it was a really nice kind of vibe, and I think there was a couple of places in Brighton as well that were like that. We've never really had that in Bristol, have we?
No, I was just thinking about this cafe that was when I was a student in Leicester. I went to this cafe and I met this guy there, and I said, that I was trying to find somewhere to live because I was living in Melton Mowbray at the time. And he said, oh, well, you can come and live with me. So I lived in this house. And then as soon as I moved in there, he just became really withdrawn. And I had to walk through his bedroom to get to the bathroom. And it was really awful. I didn't feel, I felt really uncomfortable. And we barely really talked while I lived there. And then he sort of sat me down and he said, I need to tell you something. And I said, I need to tell you something as well. And he said, well, you go first. And I said, well, I've actually found somewhere else to live. And he said, that's fine. And then he didn't say what he needed to tell me. But it transpired that he was HIV positive, and he actually subsequently died. But, I was just a young student and I didn't really know. I sort of, thinking back to it, I realised that was what was going on, but I didn't have the capacity to relate to that or to deal with that, really. And so I just moved out and got on with my life. And
so he was withdrawn because he was ill, or he got the diagnosis and then he started to become ill. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
But even if he'd been in good health, I feel like having to walk through your landlord's bedroom to get to the bathroom is...
It's not the best. Walking through any...
How good that relationship is, it's not my preference.
No, not at all.
Sad though.
Yeah, very sad. I think there's so many people. I mean, as I was saying to you, there were so many colourful personalities that were out in the Bristol gay scene in the early 90s, but who did just kind of disappear because they were HIV positive. And also, we're not very nice to each other sometimes in the gay community, and I think that wasn't expressed in It's a Sin either, about how many gay people were actually quite against people who were HIV positive. There was a lot of prejudice about that. There was a lot of slut shaming in terms of that, and a lack of understanding. But it was all brought on by fear and lack of knowledge, really.
And actually, I think there's, I think that's relatable to COVID as well. It's just trying to draw a line somewhere and being like, I'm on the right side of the line. So if it's there's this gay plague, but I don't have it because I'm good. So the way for me to prove my goodness is to dismiss you as a bad gay who's led this slutty lifestyle when you can keep it in your pants and and it's coming from a very defensive and I guess very hurt place, but obviously is so unkind to the person who's suffering.
Totally.
And you're right, actually, they don't explore that. They make it very much everyone's looking after, maybe in denial, but looking after each other.
Yeah.
And I think there is a bit of that because he has that boyfriend, doesn't he? The central one, and then he just excludes him.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He rejected.
But that was fear because he knew that. I mean, he knew that he had his partner had HIV, and he'd probably given it to him. Yeah. And I don't know. It's back then it was all very psychological and but it affected everyone. Whether you had HIV or not, psychologically it just affected you because even if you didn't have it, sometimes you thought you did, and that then affects everything because I don't know. It was a terrible time. It's after watching the first episode, I was so in two minds about whether to completely to finish the actual series, but then I just last Monday, I just went, okay, I'm just going to watch the rest of this. I'm going to watch the next episode, and then I ended up watching all of it.
Yeah. I think even for us, like for you guys in the 90s and me in the noughties, it like process of having sex involved having to think about HIV. Like whereas some straight friends who were starting to have sex in school at like 14 or 16 or whatever, that just wasn't. I think they knew HIV existed, but like it had, you know, all they were thinking about was not getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And it's like the fact that, like, as you know, a young gay man coming into your sexuality, it's like, okay, so, you know, I'm now realizing I'm attracted to boys and I want to touch them and I want them to touch me, but I know that there's this dangerous thing out there that could get me. Like, I think just having that in your kind of like knowledge is...
Yeah, it was a huge weight over you, hanging over you. And there were loads of times when I was unsafe. I mean, so I look at that show and I just think, gosh, I could have so easily have been one of those statistics.
Yeah.
And then I guess there's a little bit of guilt that you've actually survived it in some respects as well.
Yeah. Like I feel guilt, I think, a lot. Not a lot. I feel guilt at times. Like, it's a bit like, you know, I'm very happy and lucky to have HIV and it be not a problem. But then, then I feel like, one, I've let down people by getting it in the first place. But also, like, how come I get to, like, get my full life and they didn't? And, yeah. But I think it's quite easy to go down, like, a rabbit hole of neuroses, positive or negative, if you kind of growing up in that shadow.
I've always kind of been clued up on HIV, and I kind of, and like I said, I've had boyfriends who were positive, like even in the late 90s, as well as the noughties, and so I've never really had that stigma personally. But I know people that do, and I know that people that have, and it's just giving out the information and educating people, really. Yeah, about the whole thing. It's definitely. I like the fact that it's made conversations happen.
Well, it's made a lot of conversations happen tonight.
John, lovely to speak to you, and thank you so much for being a guest again.
Yeah, no, it's such a pleasure. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night. Bye. We'll see you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so. Goodbye, friends.
Take care, John.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to that. I hope you had fun. You maybe want to go back and re-listen to episode 38, because this is technically episode 38A. We hope you've had a good Christmas, regardless of the pandemic. Thank you for all your support over the last couple of years. And we will be back for more What That Old Queen in 2022. Have a great Christmas and a fabulous New Year.
You have been listening to What That Old Queen, written and presented by Tom Marshman and Bernie Hodges. The show was produced by Bernie Hodges for Hodge Podcasting in 2021. If you have a question for the Old Queens, or you'd like to be a guest, or you want to sponsor a show and give us lots of money, you can email hello@thatoldqueen.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.